As you can see, we've had our eye on you for some time now, Mr. Whedon. It appears you've been living two lives. One life you were Joseph H. Whedon, director and producer of many respectable films, and also a comic book author. You have a social security number, you pay your taxes, and you help your landlady carry her garbage. The other life is lived in Marvel and Disney, where you have contributed to the ever-growing Marvel Cinematic Universe and directed the Avengers. One of these lives has a future, the other does not. I'm going to be as forthcoming as I can be, Mr. Whedon. You're here because we need your help. It's our understanding that your friends at Marvel would like to buy the rights back to X-Men and Fantastic Four, and would like to use Quicksilver and Scarlet Witch for your next movie. My colleagues believe I'm wasting my time, but I believe you wish to do the right thing. Unfortunately, we will not be giving up the rights, nor do we want to use split ownership of Quicksilver and Scarlet Witch. However, we will share merchandising rights, and we'll let you direct some of our films for more money. All we're asking is for your cooperation, understanding, and our plan.
How about this? How about I give you one of these guys and say I'm keeping the rights to Quicksilver and Scarlet Witch?
Mr. Whedon, you disappoint me.
Your Gestapo crap does not scare me, nor do you intimidate me. Stay down. Stay down.
You're going to help us, Mr. Whedon, whether you like it or not.
What are movies? Just a lot of photographs strung together, right? Those were the words of Thomas Edison's lawyers when they argued copyrighted film. Little did they know what copyright would do for them. In the late 1800s, European films imported in the United States dominated the film market. As a result, in 1908, the Motion Picture Patents Company was found. The company became a trust of all the biggest American film companies and patent films. The MPPC would investigate any pirates who copy their licensed films. This was Edison and his partner's first step in monopolizing the industry. However, the Sherman Antitrust Act abolished the Motion Picture Patents Company, citing that they went too far in protecting the use of patents. 100 years later, companies are still at war with piracy. But why? Do they not realize the piracy is nothing new, especially when it comes to art? Many famous artists, including Leonardo da Vinci, Pablo Picasso, and Vincent van Gogh, all created their pieces based on some sort of inspiration, from religious events to portraits to something as simple as a viewing from an asylum. Even Thomas Edison himself produced films based on historic events, like the execution of Mary Stuart and President William McKinley's inauguration. All forms of art take inspiration, film especially. But if someone simply wants to make a film based on some other story or event, they are subject to a lawsuit. Even a tiny reference to something like Darth Vader or Mickey Mouse can send you in front of a judge. What some may not know is that these studios have done the same exact thing. They have taken ideas from other artists and implemented them into their own works. Take Disney, for example. You'll probably know all their classic animated movies, such as Cinderella, Snow White, Alice in Wonderland, Frozen, Hercules, The Little Mermaid, The Lion King, and so forth. But all of those films were either based on original stories from books, myths, or true events. Many of these stories were in the public domain. Take a film like The Lion King. It is basically Hamlet, but with safari animals. Many people know that Hercules is based on a Greek myth, and many adaptations of his stories have been made, like the most recent Hercules film starring Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson. Other films like Snow White and Cinderella were based on folk tales from the 1600s up to the 1800s. The only difference was that all of these movies had Disney's magic touch and happier endings. The very first copyright law was established in 1790, and copyright terms would last 14 years. That would all change over 200 years later. In 1998, Disney lobbied for the United States Copyright Extension Act, also known as the Mickey Mouse Protection Act, which extended copyright terms to the life of the author plus another 70 years. Any work authored by corporations will last 120 years, or 95 years after publication. Since then, Disney's empire has only grown into the biggest media juggernaut in the world and still derives their work from other stories. They have even bought out other studios such as Marvel and Lucasfilm, along with their franchises like The Avengers, Star Wars, and Indiana Jones. Speaking of Marvel, they too have done some copying. Getting inspiration from their work. Before becoming another media empire, they published many popular comics and created some of the most memorable characters. But many of their characters were derived from DC Comics. Characters like Deadpool. He is known as a merc with the mouth. He has lots of weapons and has a healing factor like Wolverine. Oh, and his name is Wade Wilson. Sounds familiar? DC's Deathstroke is also a mercenary with a healing factor, and his name is Slade Wilson. Marvel has also created characters like Quicksilver and Hawkeye. Quicksilver is derived from DC's Flash. Only difference is that Quicksilver got his powers from being a mutant like his father, whereas Flash got his powers in a lab accident. Hawkeye and Green Arrow. Well, you could already see what they can do. On the flip side, DC has gotten their inspiration for Arrow from Robin Hood. The list goes on and on, with characters derived from other sources. But Marvel do something with their characters that would dramatically change their landscape. In the early 90s, Marvel was about to go bankrupt. At the time, the only successful superhero movies made were Batman and Superman films from Warner Brothers and DC. Marvel attempted to adapt their characters, but it didn't work out so well. They decided that in order to compete with DC and make profit, they would have to sell the movie rights to different characters. 20th Century Fox would buy the rights to X-Men and Fantastic Four while Sony bought Spider-Man. In 2000, Fox released their first Marvel film, X-Men. In 2002, Sony released Spider-Man. The two films were widespread successes, and sequels will follow up. In 2003, we saw X2, X-Men United. A year later, we would get Spider-Man 2, which would do even better than their predecessors. The third film in both trilogies, however, did not fare so well. In 2005, Fox would release Fantastic Four, followed by its sequel, Rise of the Silver Surfer. The first film will do well, while the second not so much. Due to the financial success of these films, Marvel has raked in lots of money. The X-Men film franchise continues to this day, while Sony gave Spider-Man a reboot in 2012, and Fantastic Four will also have a reboot released in the summer of 2015. In 2008, Marvel released Iron Man and the Incredible Hulk. 1 year later, Marvel and all of its entities would be bought out by Disney. Since Marvel owned Iron Man along with the rest of the Avengers, they decided to make a series of films which are now known as the Marvel Cinematic Universe. After the first two films in 2008, Disney and Marvel would release more films starting in 2010, with Iron Man 2, which introduced Black Widow, followed by Thor and Captain America, the first Avenger. These films will lead up to 2012's The Avengers, which was the first superhero film to feature Team Up and would be Marvel's most successful film, topping $1.5 billion. Marvel has release dates planned all the way up to the year 2028. Now that Marvel's Cinematic Universe has its slate, it has many stories to tell along with numerous of characters. The only problem they have, of course, is that there are other characters missing, which will either create a plot hole or not make the stories true to source material. When Fox announced that Quicksilver will be featured in X-Men Days of Future Past, another bombshell announcement followed days later when Joss Whedon announced that Quicksilver and Scarlet Witch would appear in Avengers Age of Ultron. At first, many thought that maybe Marvel and Fox agreed that their film franchises would cross over, but that certainly was not the case. Instead, they agreed on having split ownership of Quicksilver and Scarlet Witch. The two characters would first appear in the post-credits scene of Captain America, the Winter Soldier, while Quicksilver would appear in Days of Future Past in a totally different appearance and possibly sitting with a younger Scarlet Witch in one scene. In the comics, Quicksilver and Scarlet Witch are the children of Magneto in the X-Men #4. They end up leaving their father and his Brotherhood of Mutants when they are defeated and moved to Europe. Iron Man eventually recruits them into the Avengers. In the Avengers films, we will have to watch the siblings not as children of Magneto, nor as mutants. That's right, Marvel and Disney cannot refer the two as mutants, as Fox owns the word mutant. Instead, they are referred as miracles. Another important character in the Avengers is Spider-Man, but we will not see that happening. However, Sony has been in talks to share it with Disney, but that remains to be seen. Marvel is now fighting to get their characters back, but Fox refuses to do that. Since Fox isn't willing to work with Marvel, the company has forbidden any creation of new characters for X-Men and has even canceled the Fantastic Four comic series, which will end 2 months before the Fantastic Four reboot comes out. Granted that the comic book industry, not as big as it was, it is still spiteful of Marvel to be doing this. They are afraid of Fox making more money off of their new characters and stories, but they don't realize that they don't have much to lose. In 2008, before the Disney buyout, they made around $125 million in publishing revenue. Because of the comic book films and TV shows being made, revenue in the comic book industry itself has risen 20% in the last 5 years. Over the summer, Marvel promoted merchandise and toys for Captain America, the Winter Soldier, The Amazing Spider-Man 2, and the Guardians of the Galaxy. But not a single toy or shirt had anything to do with X-Men Days of Future Past. While Captain America and Guardians of the Galaxy were critically acclaimed and financially successful, X-Men has also become one of the best movies of the summer. X-Men has been a popular franchise for so many years, yet Marvel does not capitalize on it, simply because the film rights belong to Fox and the fact that they don't get full revenue from it. With all these film rights, contracts, merchandising rights, and restrictions, the question is, are these laws benefiting anyone, or are they making matters worse? On one hand, an artist does not have to worry about not being credited for their work. But on the other hand, creativity has only been oppressed, and the corporate greed has prevented many potentially great blockbusters coming to fruition. It is unfortunate that we cannot live some of the best comic book stories throughout live action films, nor do many amateur filmmakers have much creative freedom. However, it shouldn't stop anyone from making their own films. Creativity takes inspiration. The only way you can know how to make a film is if you try to make a film. If you have to remake something or take found sources, you shouldn't have a problem as long as you give proper credit. And don't claim the original work was done by you. You need to start somewhere, right?